Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day and making good use of 2020. Do not waste it, make good use of the last days and go out there and achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. So today's story is about my labour and delivery. Why I got induced at 37 weeks, my failed epidural, and how my midwife nearly killed me. So if you haven't seen the first part of my pregnancy story, go ahead and click the link below and see how we got here in the first place. I think it's very important to watch other expectant mums videos or people who have experienced it so you can learn from it and make sure, you don't go through the same experiences. Nurses and doctors are human beings. They make mistakes just as we do. So it's really important that you keep an eye on everything they're doing for your health. So my story starts at 36 weeks when I went in for my scan and I was told my baby was on the small side. Small gestation, for those who don't know what that is, it's basically when your baby is growing smaller than your weight, height and ethnic background. So my baby was actually growing on the 5th placenta, and what that actually means is that 5% of people my height and weight, baby weighed at whatever it was at that time, which wasn't good. It was considered small. So basically my consultant told me I had to be induced at 37 weeks and I basically said no. I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't too concerned, to be honest, because my placenta was doing well, blood flow was doing well, baby was kicking, I could feel baby all the time. I was very confident and positive that my baby was doing well, and reason for small gestation was probably because of my body structure, not necessarily what research says really. So I was very confident. I wasn't willing to take the route of an induction. I had my birth notes, my birth plan, my hypnobirthing plan that I wanted so badly, and I wasn't prepared for an induction. Plus I had no idea what was involved in an induction. I basically told my consultant no, I wouldn't agree to it. I asked for a second opinion, and they recommended I go into triage to speak to the consultants over there and to get a second opinion. I also agreed to frequent monitoring before my due date. Doctor told me to go in on a Friday or Thursday, whichever days I was free, and I basically went in on a Thursday because my hairdresser cancelled my appointment. When I went in, I was basically monitored as usual. They checked baby's heart rate, my blood pressure, took urine samples, and the normal tests that they do when you would go in to see your midwife or have a scan. That's what they basically done on that day. And when what happened was they found that baby's heart rate was quite low and not consistent, so they were quite concerned, rightfully so. So they basically told me I had to spend the night in the hospital so that they can keep monitoring me just in case there was something wrong. I wasn't very happy about spending the night, but I understood why they had to do that. I spent the night. Prior to spending the night, I had to have a COVID test. They did a COVID test and everything checked out. So the ward I actually stayed on was the recovery ward. This is the ward that when you have your baby, you come back and spend the night or whatever. So it was quite interesting because I could hear crying babies and so on, and I couldn't sleep. I just couldn't sleep that day. I had an insight to what was going on with other people. Saw a lady who had a cesarean and constantly had to get help. She didn't have a partner with her. She constantly had to get help and so on and so forth. Yeah, that was quite interesting. So I spent the night. During that night, I had they monitored baby's heart rate and my blood pressure every 3 hours, and that checked out well. That was fine. There was no issues there. So a bunch of consultants and doctors came to see me and to explain to me what they were planning on doing with me, and they told me they were going to monitor me, and basically I might have to stay in the hospital until I get induced on Monday. And I told them again, that's not what I wanted. Induction was not an option for me. I wanted to wait till my due date. So, they carried on monitoring me. I remember the next day continued monitoring me again, and I made it clear to them that I didn't want to have an induction. However, a doctor came to see me and we discussed it in more detail, and basically gave me that conversation of, if something was to happen to my baby, I would live to regret it, and I didn't want that. I didn't want that on my conscience. So I basically decided to agree to the induction at 37 weeks. So initially they wanted to keep me in the hospital till I went into labour, and I said no, I want to go home, get ready and come back for my induction. So they agreed to that. Right, so when I got home, so they basically let me go. I was discharged. My partner came to get me and we went home together. I got my hair done on that Friday. The next day I went and bought little bits and pieces that I needed for my hospital bag, packed my last bits and pieces, did lots of research before my induction. I basically drank pineapple juice, did lots of exercises using my birthing ball. What else did I do? I had some herbal tea, which is meant to help you go into early labour, and I also had dates, which is meant to help you go into early labour and soften your uterus. So I did all of that with the intention that I would try and get into early labour before my induction, or even during my induction I would be, dilated to a certain extent. I also did lots of research. I went on YouTube, read all sorts of things, and basically watched other people's experience on YouTube, how the induction went, and I understood it. So I was very comfortable and confident that I could go through this. So on Sunday, so they basically told me to call on Sunday morning and they'll let me know what time to come in. So Sunday morning, I rang them to find out what time to come in, and they told me to come in straight away, which was around 9 a.m. My partner and I basically took our time to actually go in the hospital, had breakfast and all of that, and we drove to the hospital. The doctor came to see me to basically explain the process again, so I understood what was going to happen. So the doctor basically checked if baby's head had dropped, basically ready to come out that way, and baby head had dropped. Lucky for me, baby's head dropped at 28 weeks, so they were comfortable that this process was the right thing for me, because baby's head was in the right direction, and I was happy as well, because that meant I could have a natural delivery like I wanted to. So that day lots of things happened. They constantly checked baby's heartbeat, blood pressure. That process is very, very uncomfortable. You have this belt strapped to you, and you also have this I don't know if you've ever had a blood pressure checked in the hospital, but it really hurts. It's very, very painful, to be honest with you, because it squeezes so tight. So a nurse came to check my cervix just to make sure, it was at least 1 centimeter dilated, so they can decide whether to give me the Cox balloon or the pessary, I believe it's called. She put gloves on, she put lubes on her hand, right? And she stuck her fingers right in she twisted it around. It was so uncomfortable, right? I actually had gas and air during the whole process. I asked for it because my intentions was not to feel any pain whatsoever, because I felt my pain threshold was very low. I didn't think I could take pain that well. So I was prepared to take any sort of painkillers to help me with the process. So I took gas and air, which did it help? Sort of helped, I would say, but I could really feel the pressure up there when she stuck her fingers and did a 360 turn. So she did that and basically told me that baby was still quite high up there, so it wasn't low, and also I was only 1 centimeter dilated. I was actually quite upset to hear that, because I was hoping at least I would be 3-4 centimeters dilated. That was actually my prayer when I was eating dates, drinking pineapple juice, bouncing on the birthing ball, going out for walks, just a couple of days before my induction. I was praying and hoping that my first check I would be 4 centimeters dilated. You know, I've watched YouTube videos and I've seen that happen for people, so I was hoping it would be the same for me. But one thing I do know is that everyone's birth story is different, everyone's bodies is different, and your birth story is your birth story, and that's that. So I was, as I said, I was 1 centimeters dilated. I was very disappointed. They basically told me it was good enough to get the balloon in, which I was happy. So the next stage was to actually get the balloon inserted inside of me. I believe this happened about 2:25 p.m. in the afternoon. By the way, I was laid on my back the whole time. So she stuck her fingers in my vagina, followed by the cook's balloon, and she blew up the first balloon. She came down. I believe the first balloon was blown up right near my right near baby's head, and then she came down a little bit in my the walls and blew it up again, which would help me dilate and basically be ready for my to be induced the next day. So it felt like period pain. It wasn't painful. I have bad period pains anyway, so I was able to handle that, and that was a process. I would say it lasted for about 10 minutes, to be honest. Yeah, very quick. Went in, went out, zoom zoom. So afterwards, my partner came to check on me. He came to visit. Those were the visiting hours. He came to see me, and we went out for a walk. We went out for about an hour and 25 minutes walk. And the last 25 minutes of the walk, I started feeling some pains. They actually felt like I don't know if it was Braxton Hicks or contractions, but one or the other. It was quite painful. So we came back to the ward, and just so I can have a rest and try and contain these pains. So I actually started to contract, and it felt really, really painful. I could feel the pains, and at this point I was using my birthing ball, my breathing, my hypnobirthing breathing exercises, and it was, you know, everything was going well. I was able to take it in, but the pain really picked up, and it was, oh my god, it was out of this world. I tell you, I didn't know what to do with myself at this point. So I basically asked them, can I have gas and air at least? And they told me, nope, no gas and air. And this was basically the pre-show, and I had to wait till tomorrow to be able to have gas and air. And if I had gas and air now, I would be exhausted or not fit, not in the right shape, not in the right condition to be induced the next day. I can't describe contraction pain, to be honest with you, but it was very, very painful. And I actually forgot my TENS machine. That, for those of you who don't know what a TENS machine is, it basically helps you during your labour process. You hook it up to the back, and it feels like you're being electrocuted. I basically tested it out before I went into the hospital, and you know, I was very confident. I had this machine that I had all my hopes on using to help me through my pain. It was actually in my birth notes that I had written, because I wrote a new birthing plan just before I came in for my induction, just to help. Basically wrote notes to help me with how to contain my pain during contractions, but that went out the window. I completely forgot about my birth plan at that stage, and yeah, it was painful. And what my partner left me, he had to leave after visiting hours, but he basically stayed longer than visiting hours, to be honest with you, and no one kicked him out, so that was a good thing. He was really helpful, stroking my back, everything we had spoke about. So my cook's balloon was taken out at 3 a.m. in the morning on Monday, and once they took out the cook's balloon, midwife came to check to see how dilated I was, and she said I was only 2 centimeters dilated. I was very disappointed. You mean to tell me that after all the pain I've gone through, I'm only 2 centimeters dilated? Yeah, I was quite sad, but yeah, what can I do? What can I say? So my room was ready about 8:39 p.m. I kept calling my partner, can you hurry up and come? Can you hurry up and come and help me, get my stuff into the labour ward? But actually, the midwife was very helpful. The midwives are very helpful actually in the hospital. They help you with everything. The lady helped me pack all my stuff and moved me to the labour ward. When I got to the labour ward, I met I believe that was the midwife from the night before my actual midwife for the day. So she got me comfortable. I put my stuff down, had brushed my teeth, had a bath, had breakfast. Only had tea and toast, to be honest, because that's all they serve for breakfast. And I basically got ready for what's to happen. For those of you who do not know, induction and being induced and induction is sort of like the same thing. They're interchangeable. So induction is the process before you're induced, and with NHS, induction includes either a Cook's balloon or a pessary to get you dilated to a certain extent before they can start the oxytocin process. And sometimes the induction is enough for you to go into labour. However, not all of us are that lucky. So if you don't go into labour, by the time that comes out of you, you have to start the oxytocin process, which basically gives you like what do you call it? It brings about your contractions. It's a fake process or chemical process of bringing about your induction, which it's quite painful compared to a natural contraction. I got into the labour ward. I got myself comfortable. I brushed my teeth, had a bath, wore my hospital gown. My midwife for the day came to greet me with a student midwife. They were all very friendly, and they're very nice. So I laid on my back and they checked my cervix again and basically confirmed that I was indeed 2 centimeters dilated, and then they proceed to break my waters. They broke my waters. I felt a gush of water coming out my but I did have gas and air again. Told you, this is my 3rd time in having gas and air. I was not playing with my painkillers. I wanted everything that would stop me from feeling any sort of pain, and that's exactly what they did, except the night before, because I went through those contractions without any pain, without gas and air when I really needed it. But yeah, anyway, so they broke my waters and I had gas and air through that process. It wasn't painful, to be honest, but it's this long plastic tube with a hook, and they literally use it to break your waters. 5 people came to see me. I believe it was a consultant, a few doctors, 3 doctors and student doctors, and also the midwife in charge. They came to discuss with me how the day would go. They told me what to expect and what the midwife would do for me. At this point, my partner was in the room, so he was aware of everything that was going on, and the anesthetic, I can't say that word to save my life, to be honest with you. Anyway, he was part of the 5 consultant who came to see me. He was a very lovely man. His name was Adam. I would never forget his name because of how nice he was. I basically told them right there and then that I'm going for epidural. I told them right there and then I'm going for epidural from the start. I don't want to start the process and get to a point where I can't bear the pain and ask for epidural. By then, it would actually take a long time to, counteract. Yeah, it would actually take a long time to get that in me, because I'll be going through lots of pain and difficult to put that inside of me. Basically, I learnt this from YouTube, from watching other YouTubers, and they basically went for the epidural midpoint contractions, and I decided not to because I saw the pain they went through. I'm not ready to go through that. I don't want to feel no pain. My pain threshold, as I mentioned, is extremely low, so no pain for me, thank you. I am ready to take anything and everything to help me. The midwife proceeded to put a cannula inside of me, and she actually got the first one wrong. That cannula is the size of a pen and it's extremely painful. Yeah, so it was very painful. The first time she put it in, she got it wrong. I've still got she basically put it in and she got it wrong. And how can you get that wrong? I have so many veins running through my hands. I don't know anyone who has as many veins as I do. So how can you see all these veins running through me and you stick it in an area where there's no veins? From that minute or that moment, I had an incline that this particular midwife was actually quite young and probably inexperienced, hadn't had that much experience in sticking that in, because she mentioned she might have to get a doctor to come and help her do it. I thought, you should be able to do this. But anyway, so she tried again and she got it right the second time. I don't know, you might be able to see the scar. I don't know if you can see it from here. But so I've now got 2 scars in my veins. The first one that she tried to put in that never worked, and then the second one which actually worked. She stuck it in there, she put a drip through there, and then she also connected the oxytocin through there as well. So these things were like hanged to this stick or whatever you call it. I'm not sure what it's called, but it was hanged to a machine that basically was holding my drip and my oxytocin, which brings about the contractions and also the epidural I asked for. So after that, the anesthetic came in to give me my epidural. That wasn't very painful, by the way. I basically took gas in there to be able to take that pain just in case that it was painful, but it turned out to be okay. It wasn't as painful like the cannula, so he inserted that in my spine, took it down my back and connected it again to this machine that was holding all the drips that was connected to me, and that was fine. It went well. He did it right the first time. Yeah, so we started the oxytocin process and then the epidural process as well. So for every oxytocin pumped inside of me, they have to pump some epidural to take the pain away. That was what was meant to happen. Epidural was meant to be done, I believe, every 30 minutes, but they weren't doing it as often as I would have liked. I think sometimes they went an hour without doing it and I could actually feel the contractions. I was like, am I meant to feel any pain? That I got to a certain point, it was so painful, I could feel the contractions and thinking, what's going on? Am I meant to feel the pain? So I asked them, am I meant to feel the pain? And then they checked the machine and realised that it was stuck. I believe the string that was connected to me was somehow stuck there and it wasn't pumping epidural inside of me. That's why I could feel the pain. It was painful. So I was taking gas and air as well at the same time. Bear in mind, gas and air, I would say gas and air doesn't really take away the pain. Like, you can still feel the pain, but you're high, so it makes it sort of bearable, to be fair. So it was painful. Epidural wasn't working, so they had to call the anesthetic man to come back and fix the machine, which he did. He came back, fixed it, and it started working again, thank God. This was, I believe, an hour and a half, 2 hours into my contractions. So I let's just say I felt what real contractions are, and that shit is painful as hell. It's so painful, but for some reason I managed through it. I didn't feel like I was dying. I managed to get through it. Yeah, I believe an hour into starting the oxytocin process, my baby started to react to it. She wasn't happy about it. Her heartbeat dropped, and my midwife basically hit the alarm and called the doctors to come in. The doctors came in, checked everything, told them to halt the process, stop the process, monitor baby again for baby's heart rate to come back to normal. Once it's back to normal, then they can start the oxytocin process again. So they basically told me at this point, if it doesn't work for the second time and they hit the emergency button again, I would have to go in for a C-section, because they can't afford to let my baby go through all this distress. I thought, Bloody hell, what's going on? At this rate, I was praying, I was practicing all my breathing exercise to make sure that my baby is as relaxed as possible, because I know anything I feel, baby feel, everything I'm going through, she's feeling it. So it was really important for me to stay as calm as possible, breathe as, you know, be as relaxed as possible. Yeah, to stay as calm as possible, and that's what I did. So at this point, baby's heart rate start to come back to normal again. They had stopped the oxytocin process and the epidural process, and at this point I was just getting a drip inside of me. Yeah, so it was lunchtime for my midwives, and a new midwife basically came in to take over so they can go on lunch. And when it was a male midwife actually, and I could tell he was much more experienced than they were, and looked a bit older, wasn't young like my midwives, and he seemed to know a lot more about what he was doing. So initially, my previous midwives, they started my oxytocin at 6, but this midwife who came in, he started the process again. At this point, he started it at 3. Not sure if it's 3 centimeters. I don't know how they measure it, but it's basically a number on the machine that they move it to. And he started it at 3, and he basically said because it's a small baby, it's very important to start it with small doses and build it up. So I started it at 3, and baby started to react to it very well. She was calm, heartbeat was normal, there were no issues there. And yeah, I was happy with what was going on. Then my midwives came back from lunch and took over, and they proceeded to increase my oxytocin drip in little increments, just to make sure that baby's able to take every increment that it goes up to. So that's a key thing to look out for. If you're having an induced process, always ask questions. Ask them on what number. I was always asking, so what number are we on now? What number are we on now? Just to make sure when they move it up, they're not jumping big steps. So throughout the process, I actually hadn't eaten. I was so hungry, but I couldn't eat anything. I was drinking water. That was the only thing I was drinking. Yeah, and that was it really. So at this point, I think we got to 24, and the senior midwife came in and spoke to my midwife and basically checked that they were doing things properly. I think the good thing about the trust that I had my baby was the senior midwife always came in to check and make sure that they're doing things properly, which is good. It's good practice to make sure that the midwives are doing as they are trained and not making mistakes on human beings like me. So yeah, she came in, she checked what number I was on, and she was very happy with how baby was coping. And she basically said that my contractions were not as frequent as they would want, so let's take it up a notch to 24 so that we can get the contractions as frequent as possible. My actual midwife was hesitant to do so because she felt, you know, because she had initially started my drip at 6 and baby reacted badly to it. She didn't want to push it up a notch. So she was asked to move it to 24. So however, at this point I was on 12. Was it 12, babe? It was 12, wasn't it? So from 12 to 24. However, she moved it from 12 to 42. That was actually life-threatening at this point, because if she had kept it at 42, that could have caused me or my baby our lives, or something dramatic could have happened. So as the senior midwife was walking out, she basically just looked behind her to see what number it was on, and basically noticed that it was on 42, and told her to correct it. And she scrolled her for it, to be fair. She gave her a good telling off right in front of us as well. So at 5 p.m. they basically decided to check how dilated I was, and at 5 p.m. they basically decided to check how dilated I was, and the midwife and the student nurse, they both, you know, put their fingers up there as they would to check how dilated I was. The student midwife was under the impression that I was only 4 centimeters dilated, and my midwife thought I was 7. They weren't sure, basically. They didn't know how dilated I was. I don't know how. That's crazy. Like a whole midwife, you don't know how dilated I was. And they called the senior midwife just to be sure. And then the senior midwife came in. This lady, she was a bit older. Very, very big. When I tell you she was huge, right? She seemed to know what she was doing. She stuck her fingers in my and basically said I was 9 to 9.5 dilated. Like, how can my own midwives get that wrong? How can they not tell that I was at least 9 centimeters dilated? Yeah, the senior midwife could tell. Yeah, so I was, at this point, I was 9.5 centimeters dilated, and the midwife could feel baby's head. She put her hand in there and she pushed my uterus behind baby's ear so it can just slightly pop out of my uterus. And she basically told me to start pushing. It was just over 5 p.m. when I was told I was about 9.5 centimeters dilated, and I was so happy. So happy, because my midwife had previously told me, don't get my hopes up, I might not be as dilated as I thought, or I was hoping that I was at least 7 centimeters dilated the first time they checked me. And to know I was fully there. I was basically fully dilated. I pushed. I believe I only pushed for 10 minutes and she proceeded to cut me. I basically had a episiotomy. Yeah, that was quite sad, to be honest, because she never asked me whether to cut me or not. What I do know is that as part of the process, they should ask your permission or inform you that they're going to cut you. But she just basically cut me because they couldn't monitor baby's head and they couldn't tell how baby's head was doing, and she just grabbed the scissors, cut me, didn't inform my partner. I was pissed afterwards because I only pushed for about 10 minutes and I felt I wasn't given the opportunity to push long enough to try and at least get my baby out naturally without being cut. And they cut me and I pushed a little bit more and baby came out exactly 5:30. Yeah, I was so happy. I was crying, my partner was crying, baby was crying. I was so emotional. So much emotions going on in the room. I just can't describe it. My brains were all over the place. I felt battered and bruised at the same time. I was filled with joy, filled with grace that this baby that God had put inside of me is finally here. The wait is finally over. The struggle is over. Yeah, I was so happy. They put baby on my chest and she was crying. I breastfed her straight away and that was pretty much it. I was bleeding a certain part of my vagina and the midwife couldn't tell where it was coming from. She called the doctor to come and have a look and he didn't even know what part of my vagina I was bleeding from, and they basically decided to just leave it as that and assumed maybe it was coming from inside of me. Yeah. So if I tell you how big this senior midwife's hand is, right, it's literally, you see my arms here, it's like 3 times my arms. She put her whole hand inside my vagina. I was so shocked to see that his hand can fit in my vagina. She put it in my vagina and literally took out all the blood clots and all the disgusting stuff in there, and yeah, that was it. So afterwards I got dressed and basically had to move to the recovery room. Considering I had lost so much blood, I reckon they should have given me a wheelchair, but they didn't. I had to struggle and walk. My partner carried all my stuff with me again, walking to the recovery room, and they basically told him he couldn't come in, he had to go home. Like, it was so sad. I was thinking, he just helped me go through this whole process and I needed help. I was in so much pain because after they had stitched me up, I could start to feel the pain coming through from the stitching, yet he wasn't allowed to come with me to the recovery room. Yeah, that was quite sad. He had to go home straight away and I said goodbye. And I went into the recovery room with the midwife who helped me settle in. I had this whole room to myself. It was like a room for 8 beds, but I was the only person in there, so the room was so cold. I was freezing. I'm pretty sure my baby was cold as well. That night my mum came to see me because, you know, my mum's a nurse as well, and she had worked in that hospital, so she was able to come in and help me. She actually stayed with me till about 1-2 a.m. in the morning, helping me breastfeed and look after my baby, and left me there. The next day I was so tired, I was exhausted, but I felt like I had been battered and bruised, you know, from having constant blood pressure checks, having all these drips inside of me, my not as well. It was just all too much for me, to be honest with you. I spent the night in the hospital, and the next day I was discharged late in the night because they had to, you know, make sure everything had checked out because I had lost a lot of blood. This whole process was very, very emotional for me, life-changing, painful, but I got through it having such a supportive partner, family and friends who really helped me go through this process. So I just want to say thank you all for being there for me throughout this whole process, and we got to the finish line in the end. So that is it. That is my labour and delivery process, and I hope it helps you get through yours as well. Thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and I hope this video helps you go through your own process as well. Yeah, stay tuned for the next video, which will be more baby stuff. I'm on a baby journey, and I want to go through that baby journey with you guys as well. Mwah. Thank you.